Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom Weekly from the Greater Orlando Center for Spiritual Living. Each week, we share practical spiritual insights designed to support your growth, helping you live with more clarity, compassion, and intention. Wherever you're listening from, we're glad you're here. Let's begin.
So today, we are happy to welcome Reverend Cindy Grime, and here's a little bit about her. Reverend Cindy Grime is the spiritual director of Center for Spiritual Living Ocala, and a visionary peace builder dedicated to creating a better world for future generations. With nearly 40 years of experience in social work, restorative practices, and spiritual leadership, she brings together ancient wisdom and modern neuroscience to make peace practical. A TEDx speaker known for her talk, Kindness is the Cure, Reverend Cindy calls us to move beyond inspiration into embodied action. Her message is simple and powerful. The peace we preach must be the peace we practice. Please join me in welcoming Cindy Grimes.
What a fabulous setup this morning. I just love it. Y'all are so much bigger than we are in Ocala, but we do share one thing, one person, and that is Reverend Peggy. How many of you know and love Reverend Peggy Hostetler? I had not heard there's a hall named after her. I really love that. She was my first teacher in Science of Mind 20-something years ago, 23, 24 years ago. Isn't that something? And here I am standing in this pulpit. So I am just so grateful and honored to be here. I usually go on, and I understand I have like 15 minutes, so we'll get right to business. So go ahead, and I'll be doing this. Open at the top. I am also amazed, I chose this topic because it is near and dear to my heart, of course, not knowing what would be happening in the world and where we would be today. So to talk about peace building at this moment in our national history, where we have just found out that we are at war, it blows my mind. But Spirit, of course, plans all of these things, and here I am just doing my role. So what if New Thought communities are the peace builders of our time? So I'm going to lead you through a few ideas here. How many of you know this term paradigm shift? You know what a paradigm shift is? It's when there is a radical and fundamental shift in the underlying assumptions of our reality. For example, when there was a time when people believed that the earth was flat. And people would live in a certain way on a flat earth versus when they found out that it was round. So I'm going to share a true paradigm shift. How many of you are aware of the great horse manure crisis of the 1890s? You know it? There's one person. Anybody else? A couple of people know about this? True story. So what that headline says is, in 50 years, every street in London will be buried under 9 feet of manure. Why? Because the mode of transportation was what? Horses. So think about all of the big cities. Think about New York, San Francisco, London, all of these places where everybody had a horse. And we know that horses have emissions, right? All kinds of nasty, yucky emissions. So there were all of these horses lined up on the streets. And not only that, what happens when your mode of transportation breaks down or dies? And they didn't have all of what we have today to take care of this hot, nasty mess, right? Keep going. But okay, so did the world end up, or did the big cities end up in 30 feet of manure? No, they didn't. We know something different happened. So in, I think it was 1894, 1898, New York City held a big conference, a big convention. They called people from all over the world to come and deal with this situation of the growing piles of horse manure. And 2 days into this 10-day workshop, or 3 days, they threw up their hands and they said, that's it. There is no solution to this. But of course we know that didn't happen, right? What was the solution? The automobile, right? The horseless carriage. The interesting thing to me about this is that this solution already existed when this thing was happening. When people were throwing up their hands saying, oh, there's nothing we can do, it was already in production. But there were the naysayers, right? There were the people who said, oh, there's no way. Who could love this thing? Like, you can't love a car, this vehicle, like you love your horse. Plus, they're expensive, they're super fast, there'll be lots of accidents. This will never take off. And of course, here we are today, right? In a hot mess, right? Full of some BS, a little bit of manure that we're all wading through right now. So it feels really kind of apropos for the time that we are in. So I want you to think about this idea of paradigm shifts. Now, paradigm shifts happen to us collectively, but then we also have the paradigm shifts that happen in our own lives. I had a complete shift in my paradigm and what I thought was possible when I stepped into Science of Mind Church. So I'm going to lead you in a short guided imagery right now. And I just want to say that it is an imaginary scenario, although you may feel like I do, that there's a whole lot of truth to it. I have done this imagery in lots of different places, and I get lots of different, results from it. Mostly really good. So I'm going to invite you now to close your eyes for a minute if you feel comfortable doing that, or just soften your gaze and take a nice deep breath and let your body start to relax. And with every breath you take, your body relaxes a little bit more and your mind is free to imagine. So I invite you into an imaginative exploration, one that allows us to access meaning, possibility, and inner wisdom. An exploration that will open us to what may be useful and helpful for seeing life with more curiosity, more compassion, and more appreciation. Imagine for a moment a time before your birth, when you were a soul, an energy, a consciousness, an awareness, wandering in some other dimension of time and space. You are immersed in the beauty and harmony of a vast field of infinite intelligence and awareness. Call it spirit, source, love, life, or paradise. A call went out for volunteers into that field of infinite potential. See, there was a small blue planet on the outskirts of the Milky Way galaxy that was in crisis. The human race was at a precarious juncture. There was fear and dysfunction on many different levels, and so it was an opportunity for service and adventure. So you took the challenge and volunteered to come to planet Earth. A whole series of decisions were made before you came, including the role you would play and the work you would do while you were on Earth. In order to complete your assignment, you would be given every talent, every skill, every resource, and all the understanding you would need to carry out the work that was yours to do. You knew that life on planet Earth was a privilege and a choice, and a very worthwhile one, because while serving, you would have the opportunity not just to experience life on this amazing planet, but to learn, to grow, to expand, and to evolve. Your personal evolution and that growth would facilitate the evolution of life itself on the planet. You looked at the possibilities before you with enthusiasm, joy, and great expectation. Before coming, you chose a time and a place to be born and to reside, knowing each time and place has its particular cultural and societal norms. You would choose a racial and ethnic form that would allow you to best express yourself. You would choose a personality profile that would empower you to use your talents and gifts. You chose a socioeconomic class that would provide you with challenges and benefits needed to grow. A gender expression with its opportunities and challenges. A set of parents who would provide you with the difficulties and strengths you could draw upon to prepare you for the service you were coming to perform. You also chose any siblings and significant others who would provide you with companionship and conflicts to impart necessary lessons while empowering you to develop inner strength and resources. Finally, you chose a name for yourself. Once all these decisions were made, you were free to come to planet Earth, taking up residence in the body that was born as you. There was, however, an important catch to the process. To make your human adventure even more exciting and more engaging, you would forget all that transpired before your birth. Not because anything was wrong, but because remembering is part of the journey. So with the passage of time, you would eventually rediscover why you were born at this time and place in the history of your family and the planet. Slowly but surely, you would come to appreciate the wisdom of all the choices you made because of how beautifully and perfectly they situated you for the service you came to perform, while maximizing your potential for learning and growth. So, what if all your challenges have been designed to expand your capacity to love, lead, serve, and understand? What if life isn't happening to you, but in, through, and as you? What if the same intelligence that brought you here is still guiding you, conspiring on your behalf? And now begin to bring your attention back to this time and place, in this room. And when you're ready, open your eyes. What if life is truly conspiring on our behalf? You understand why I get mixed responses to this. I've done this with secular groups, folks that are not spiritual at all, and I get some people that saying, oh, hell no, I would have never chosen those parents. I would have never chosen that sibling. That can't be. I had a therapist get really mad one time too. She said, there's no way, what are you saying? That people who were abused or people who were born in really difficult circumstances chose that? How could you say that? You know, a year later, she came back to me and she apologized. She said, of course, it has to be that way. What more empowering idea that we choose, right? That we get to choose. And that's what we teach here. Let's go back to that slide before that. Going the wrong way. There you go. Okay, so what if we did? What if we did? And again, I'm saying it's imaginary, right? But what more empowering way to think about our lives, but to take responsibility for all of it and make the most of it. And so in that meditation, we talked, choosing the place where you were born. How many of you have read the Four Agreements? You know, there's a part in there where Don Miguel Ruiz talks about the domestication of humans. So we here are domesticated in a particular way, born in this culture, in this society. If you were born in India, it might be different. If you were born in China, it would be different, right? If you were born in Israel, it would be very different what the norms are, what we think. So I think about this as like, we put on a pair of glasses, right? Anybody ever wear colored sunglasses? What happens when you put on a pair of pink sunglasses? Everything looks pink for a while. Everything looks pink for a little bit, but you keep them on for long enough and it just looks like the way it is until you take them off and you go, oh wow, that was changing my view a little bit. So we all have these things that are tinting our view of the world. That's why I use the glasses. And we'll say that that is our belief systems, our BS, to go along with our metaphor from earlier, right? So our belief systems, our BS, if you will, are the glasses through which we view the world and anticipate what's likely to come next. Because this is what we've always known, right? This is what's coming next. So we behave according to our expectations. So together, we have lots of problematic BS. We have lots of stories that we have inherited, lots of things that we have told ourselves that we believe is true, until you set it aside for a moment, or you take that observer view and you think about, wow, is this really legit? Like, is this for real? Go ahead. Here's one. How about this? This is how things have always been and how they will always be. Has anyone else ever heard that one? Right? This is how it always is, right? People are evil, people are this, people are that. This is how it's always been. This is how it's always going to be. Next. Scarcity, right? There's not enough, fill in the blank. There's not enough time, there's not enough money, there's not enough resources, I'm not smart enough, right? Therefore, competition and or force is necessary to get our share, to get what's mine, right? Next. Evolution is based on survival of the fittest and hierarchies of dominance. How many of you have heard that? Survival of the fittest. And how many of you have believed that survival of the fittest means the biggest, the baddest, the meanest? Do you know that that's not what Darwin said? Darwin's definition of the fittest was the most adaptable to change, right? Not the apex predator, because we know that they're on their way out. It's not that. It is the ones who are most adaptable to change. Next. Violence solves problems and makes us safer, i.e. war creates peace. How crazy is that one, right? War creates peace. It just doesn't make any sense unless this is what you've been told over and over and over again. Like my husband says, it makes sense if you don't think about it. Right? The moment you give it any thought, it doesn't make any sense. Next. This one, and this is one that really, I learned this in our Science of Mind teaching, right? This idea that we are all on our own, that we are separate from God, that we're separate from nature, that we're separate from one another, is all a belief system that is also some BS. And add that next little one. And the corollary to that is that some of us are better than others, right? Hierarchies of people. We all know who's at the top of the food chain in our made-up story about how life is. And we know who's at the bottom. And all of that is a belief system that is nonsense. This is part of why I do the work that I do in Circle, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. Next. So, paradigms again. What is this thing? What is this thing we call peace? I don't know what you all think about peace, but we're going to investigate this a little bit in our workshop. That we all have different ideas of what peace might be, but this was a paradigm shift for me. That peace doesn't mean that everything is wonderful and we're all singing kumbaya and holding hands and getting along all the time. That's not peace. The Dalai Lama said that peace is not the absence of conflict, except that there will always be differences. Always going to be differences. When you've got people with diverse perspectives, different points of view, there's going to be differences of opinion. Peace means solving these differences, finding solutions through peaceful means, through dialogue, through education, through humane ways. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Next. That's a paradigm shift for a lot of folks. And here's another one. Hit it again. Rather than being dangerous, conflict holds within it vital messages regarding unmet needs and areas of necessary change. Given this understanding, then safety is increased not by avoiding conflict, but by moving toward it with the intention of hearing the messages within. We live in a world that is telling us we need more walls. We need taller walls, we need wider walls, we need to isolate. And I'm saying that that is not making us more peaceful. Not knowing the people that live next to us, not knowing our neighbors, not knowing one another, not acknowledging that oneness, that we are all on this beautiful little blue planet all together, is not making us safer. So the invitation, you can go ahead. The invitation then is to confront. How does that make y'all feel? A little nervous? When I went to my first Peacebuilding immersion and they were teaching us to go toward the conflict, I've been a conflict avoider for much of my life. And that was a huge paradigm shift, but not to just confront willy-nilly, not to just go into danger. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm going to give you some tools and some understanding to be able to do it in a more effective way today. But to confront means to go toward the thing. A lot of us were taught in New Thought to deny, right? You don't want to focus on the thing that you don't want. We want to focus on the things that we do want. We don't look at that messy, nasty stuff back there. And I'm saying, turn around and look at it and know that you have the power, you have the presence, you have everything you need. We are strong to look at that thing and know that there's another side to that. When you look at the thing you're afraid of, how many times have you been through something and you're so afraid of whatever it is, and then you finally take a look at it and it just goes poof. It's not a thing. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. What if we could uncover the messages that are inherent in our conflicts? I do this work because I am a brown-skinned Latina. My parents, family members are way on the other side of the political spectrum from me. And I don't want to write anybody off that I love. I had to find ways within myself to be able to stay in relationship with people I disagree with. My whole family is in law enforcement. So we reconcile that, right? Brown skin, law enforcement, you know, the progressives, the liberals, and the MAGAs, and all of this stuff, and we're all in this big wide world together. How do we get along? How do we take down those walls and meet in our common ground? What if the peace that we preach as New Thought communities would become the peace that we practice? That we use our teaching not just for getting parking spaces or getting a bigger bank account, but to create peace in our world. My nonprofit is called Circle Up Center for Practical Peacebuilding. Practical peacebuilding. I'm not talking about brokering peace in the Middle East. That's way beyond my pay grade. But I know how to make peace with people on the other side of the spectrum from me. I know how to live in peace with those family members that I don't agree with and those friends, and how to maintain my center and my integrity and bring them along with me in some cases. Right? What if we are the ones that we've been waiting for? What if it's not going to happen out there? There's no great savior that's going to make it right for us, but that we are the ones that are doing it in our own lives. And then it ripples out from here. That's what I'm suggesting. Next. Ernest Holmes said, "We are the forerunners, breaking down barriers of race consciousness, the accumulated effects of misperceptions, and the fears of the universe in which we live." This is Ernest Holmes, and for those of you who are new, he was the founder of this teaching we call the Science of Mind, and what we teach here at Centers for Spiritual Living. Next. But as we free ourselves, we are helping to free the whole human race from the bondage of fear, ignorance, superstition, and thoughts based on what the past has brought forth. But the past is dead, but guess what? Next. We're alive. We're the ones here, right? So the old ways are not going to open the new doors. We're talking old paradigms. We are in a whole new game right now. As you watch things falling apart in the world, right? We get to decide, and who better than New Thought? Conscious creators to create the world that we want to live in, that we get to do that in our own experience. That's my challenge to each and every one of you and to all of our New Thought communities. Other communities like, the Mormons have genealogy, Catholics have Catholic charities. Why would we not be the peace builders of the world? We're not trying to change anybody. We're just bringing forth what is inside all of us and the knowing that we are truly one. And so I leave you with this affirmation. I'll say it once and then I'm going to invite you to say it with me. I'm not bound by old stories or limiting beliefs. The universe is conspiring on my behalf. I claim my freedom and I live from my highest truth. You want to say it with me? If you feel so moved. I am not bound by old stories or limiting beliefs. The universe is conspiring on my behalf. I claim my freedom and live from my highest truth. And so it is. And so it is. Thank you. Thank you for having me this morning.
Thank you for spending this time with us on Spiritual Wisdom Weekly from the Greater Orlando Center for Spiritual Living. If this episode supported you in any way, we invite you to stay connected. Listen again, share it with someone you care about, or simply carry what resonated with you into your week. Until next time, take good care and keep growing in spirit.